Thank you, Tom. I think you noticed that in these social sciences, much of it is opinion, but Tom is really trying to find scientific evidence and do scientific research to lead to the future. If there are questions, I see one question here, please.
Yeah, hello, I'm Ines coach from Slovenia. I'm actually a judge also. It's quite interesting, to present us all this eye contact with everything, but it would be very nice to say us how to learn gymnasts to be with all the time open eyes and all these things, It's very nice that you find out this, it's excellent, but how to teach them, Not to say them just keep eyes open, would be nice,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, quite a good question.
It's a simple question, but it's very important,
Yeah, of course. When you think about teaching gaze behavior or perceptual, conceptual strategies, usually you use two strategies in perceptual training. Either you actively try to direct gymnasts' gaze, for instance by using such a laser pointer, try to follow the laser pointer on this wall when performing a round-off, when running towards a target, when doing a twist, whatever. You put visual markers in the environment that help gymnasts focus their gaze on specific locations. So this is one strategy, actively directing gaze. The second strategy is called occlusion technique. This is related to the second part, environmental information. There are some apparatuses or some ideas on how to occlude specific information. For instance, when you run towards the vaulting table, it's not only that environmental information is important, but also binocular information. And it changes your complete feeling if you perform a skill under monocular conditions. So just occlude specific information to pay attention to that information, which then may help to facilitate skill acquisition. You could also use this Plato system that I talked earlier about it, these goggles, which can be shut opaque, that you can see through or you can't see through, you can trigger them. However, they cost about 5,000 euros. I'm not sure if you can afford it to have it for your gymnast. But binocular, monocular occlusion is quite simple. There are specific contact lenses that you can put on your eyes that either occlude your whole peripheral field of view or only your foveal field of view. These are two strategies, so either actively directing gaze or trying to occlude information. This is usually what you find when you think about perceptual training, but this is only what you can read in the applied literature for training science. I guess in gymnastics, particularly in gymnastics, no one has done research on that. So I can just say what strategies are available. Maybe you have to make your own experiences with that. Actively directing gaze could be advisable. Occlusion, I'm not sure. Even performing under complete darkness, using a stroboscope, whatever. There are a lot of creative approaches, but I have no final advice on it.
So as I understand, it's more or less you are looking or not looking like from your own, So, but some of these things you can learn, you can teach after a while. Okay.
Yeah, that would be my position. And I think you should put a little emphasis, or maybe more emphasis on it in daily training.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the group? Yes, please.
From Germany. We also investigate the board's position towards the takeoff parameters. So change the takeoff parameters instead of the board position.
Yeah, they slightly change when performing handsprings. We only analyze handsprings, so no Yurchenko forms, only handsprings. They slightly change, of course, so takeoff velocity slightly changes, takeoff angle slightly changes. It's actually published in Research Quarterly for Exercise and Sport 2013. There was the article that came out. So I don't have all the details in my mind, but what I know was that takeoff velocity and takeoff angle slightly changes. However, gymnasts adapted towards the repulsion phase, and the second flight phase is almost identical. So slightly change in takeoff towards the repulsion phase and almost identical second flight phase. So there's no optimization by putting the board closer or farther away. Gymnasts adapt to have a stable, as you say, invariant second flight phase. That was what we found with these gymnasts. I labeled them expert gymnasts, however, they were not the national team gymnasts, but second national league, I think.
Other questions from the group? Because I think I have a question. Because I think most of us understand that the best time to learn the very complex aerial skills, and that's what most of us are interested in, is in that 11, 12, 13-year age group. I suspect from what you've shown us here that the ones that are most successful are the ones that automatically learn to keep their eyes open. Can others be taught to keep their eyes open? Can that increase the number that can be successful? And also, would it, by teaching this, could people later on, like at 18, 19, 20, you're not likely to be as successful? By teaching them how to keep eyes open, would they be more successful?
Good point, yeah, that's a good point. I have no answer on that.
Thank you. Here's your plain text. Of course I understand.
Next presentation.
No, of course, as motor behavior changes over learning, also visual perception changes, of course. So it's more a contingency than a causal relation. But my point would be you can teach people at every age group to optimize gaze behavior, which is likely to optimize motor behavior. However, as I said, it's a contingency, so no clear ideas on how this actually works. In literature, they only talk about sensory motor contingencies, because it's not only visual perception, but also kinesthetic perception, vestibular perception, that you can either actively use in training or either occlude in training. For instance, there is a methodology called galvanic vestibular stimulation. You put some electrodes towards your vestibular apparatus, and you give a small current on these electrodes, and this completely changes your spatial awareness. This completely changes the spatial perception, and no one used it in training up to now, only in cases of rehabilitation, for instance, after specific problems with your vestibular apparatus. I think it could be quite an interesting approach to use it in gymnastics training as well. So I have no idea, can only speculate, but yes, maybe it's not more like only keeping your eyes open and putting as much as information as possible, but searching and using the most functional information. Sometimes you walk around but do not use most functional information, and just saying, okay, most functional information is just there, or there, or there, but you can occlude this information, you can leave out this information. This can optimize your gaze, also your motor behavior. I'm quite sure that this will work out in training.
Is there any different what the gymnasts see in the background? The color, white, green, red. Is there any influence on the view of?
What is all? The whole is just white, nothing else.
Yeah, that is a very good question. That is a very good question. I would be so happy to do some research on that. We just had one bachelor thesis, and what he did was painting lines on the distant wall, and in one condition the lines showed slightly to the left side, in another condition the lines showed slightly to the right side, and what gymnasts were asked to do was just run towards this wall, perform a forward somersault. What you could see was that the forward somersault tended to drift a bit to the left in this left line condition, and tended to drift a bit to the right in this right line condition. Because of course your normal experiences, everything is just straight, just aligned to gravity, and you use it, develop specific contingencies. If this changes your motor control. If color is an option, I don't know. In perceptual training, you always say, try to keep the contrast as strong as possible. And I think the most or the worst environment for gymnasts would be to, as you said, have only a white wall completely around them, like no spatial orientation is possible, and no spatial orientation is possible. So keep the contrast as strong as possible. In gymnastics, there is no research on that. Only to say keep the contrast as strong as possible should help to optimize gaze behavior. Less contrast could hamper gaze behavior. Yeah, of course.
Any other questions?
So you actually really find out that those gymnasts who present the skills with open eyes are much better than the other one. Because I remember I was gymnast, I was doing triple on high bar, triple on rings, but I never saw something, you know. Just beginning and the end. You know, but I could still make this, you know. That's why I'm asking, you know. Maybe some of us was adapted or something, you know.
I'll give you the answer, but Dr. Heinen said before that those that did the double straight, so similar to a triple, had less visual information than those that were twisting. Possibly that's part of the answer.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. So, I mean, adaptation is multi-sensory. You can rely more on vision, you can rely more on vestibular input, you can rely more on kinesthetic input. Could be very individual for individual gymnasts. There is a systematic relationship between gaze behavior, open eyes, information input, compared to expert, or when you compare experts with novices, but you never know if this is causal, of course, because we had no expert perform now and compare it with his performance 20 years ago. So it's more like a differential research, so hard to answer. But given that these sensory motor contingencies are multisensory, some rely more on vision, some rely more on vestibular input, some rely more on kinesthetic, this could of course differentiate, of course. Yeah. Visual perception may, which could be
Some advantage.
some advantage, maybe some advantage.
So thank you for the information. I think there's more for us to think about with more research to come. Let's take a 20-minute break. So 10:35, can we be back?
Yep.
10:15 now, so 20 minutes. Thank you.